Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how I made this 3D artwork out of my brain scan. This is a continuation from a previous video where a friend of mine and myself put my brain scan into Blender. This is MRI scan data which is converted into a volume which is then converted into a mesh. Making artwork from this is something I've wanted to do for a while, and it kind of felt like now I'm in a phase where I want to make artwork again, why not start with this? It also provides an opportunity to test some of the new 4.0 features in Blender. More specifically, I was interested in playing with the AGX view transform, which if you don't know kind of gives us a bit more of a realistic interpretation of color and lighting, where super vibrant and bright areas of objects tend to bias towards whiter shades rather than just being pure saturation, which is fantastic for like really brightly lit areas or emissive surfaces and stuff like that. However, since this is a process video, it's going to be a longer video than usual, but I feel like from my perspective that means it contains more value because I leave in a lot of the mistakes I make while making the artwork, and I feel like that's quite important for people to see, because when you're improvising 3D artwork, a lot of the times you'll bump into things which make you really excited when you start feeling like everything is going in a good direction and there are so many different possibilities you can make use of. And then at other times things go wrong, and sometimes it's a journey of discovery, realizing actually a technique you thought would be useful is actually not appropriate, or maybe you've forgotten a part of the process, and you'll see some of this ideation process going on as you watch the video. So it makes sense to me that some people might want to watch this all the way through in one sitting, some people might want to split it up or even just leave it on in the background, but regardless I hope you find it interesting. And before I leave you to the video, I just want to say that since I now have more bandwidth to upload videos, I'm interested in starting a series on the second channel where I answer some of your questions. Things about creating content, 3D artwork, the community, whether you want any information from other creators as well, because I can get into contact with them and ask them questions on your behalf, for the purpose of doing a discussion / help / advice series for the second channel. So if there's anything you want to know from me or any information you want me to obtain from other creators in the Blender space or general CG community, let me know and I might be able to do a video for you on the second channel. So anyway, enjoy the video and I'll see you around. So I'm basically trying to clean up my brain a bit, but only from like one MRI perspective, which is obviously a bit tricky because when you're looking down one axis of a scan, you're getting slices which are great in terms of resolution from that particular axis. But if we're only using that one scan, then we're basically interpolating between each of those frames, which is why things get blurry in between, as they're effectively like interpolating between pixels, which is what we can see here. Now there are tools available to combine different axes of the scans, but to be honest, I can't really be bothered to download the tools, learn about them, all that kind of thing. What I'm doing at the moment is kind of just cleaning up loose bits around the brain. So there's a question here of now whether to do like an artistic interpretation in the way of like, once all these loose bits are gone, should I just sculpt on top of the brain to make it look better artistically, or should I try and keep to reality in some way where even though it's messy, I know this is still authentic. Like this is an authentic representation of my brain, even if it's incomplete. What I could do is maybe some kind of like holographic thing to make it make more sense that it's actually an incomplete brain in terms of like data presentation, because then it kind of makes more sense that it's all messy and weird as a brain. Also, I suppose a tip for cleaning up would be, and I haven't actually tried this yet, we can invert selection, right? Invert select. So if you have like one large chunk, like the actual brain itself, if you select it and then inverse select, it should give you everything else. But the problem is if different core parts of the brain aren't connected, then you might end up deleting significant parts of the brain. But in this case, it seems like most of the brain is intact because the voxel settings used were enough to kind of blur the space in between. And I was using Ben Cartesian Caramel's scan data visualizer tool to help do this. And that came about because of the earlier project of putting my brain into Blender from the MRI scans. Now when it comes to stuff like this, we can see that the mesh is not manifold, so again, like you wouldn't want to 3D print from this because it's so messy. But if you really did want a 3D print of your brain, then A, you're going to need to use one of those tools, which is better for combining multiple axes of scans, and or B, sculpt over the top of it to make it a more consistent mesh. But the thing is, because the scan resolution was so low for this, we end up with a situation where, you know, most of the wrinkles aren't really present, so it's really not a good result. And there are lots of weird bits in the mesh. What we could do, because there is a 3D print toolbox, I wonder what happens if we try using that. Let me check my preferences quickly. Okay, 3D print toolbox, that is enabled. Sidebar, checks, solid, non-manifold edges 196, cleanup, make manifold. Now check again. It's taking a while to check this time. I wonder if that will crash Blender. Oh, here we go. More information. 0 non-manifold edges, lot of hanging faces. Well, we can see that. All right, so we have something that's that's relatively manifold, but still a pretty awful mesh, but maybe like something that's a good starting point for, again, something holographic maybe. Now let me try and do something about this. Let's go into sculpt mode. Because it's manifold, technically, we shouldn't be too worried about using sculpt features now, except for when stuff like this happens. I don't really care about using n-gons for something like this. Okay, let's try and flatten this down a bit. Again, see, now when we make kind of, well, I want to say destructive changes like this, it becomes less realistic. But still, I guess it's like a compromise. Let's crease this up a bit. I can see roughly where creases used to be before making the changes, but still, that's a bit too elevated. All right, it's kind of bringing it back down to baseline a bit. All right, so we have a relatively accurate, messy brain. Maybe let me get rid of this. Funny thing is, no one's seen me actually working on video for quite a long time. I was getting a little bit, not dejected or bored necessarily of the regular YouTube format, but understanding that both my requirements and YouTube's requirements have changed over time. So now new methods need to be implemented for producing things. New methods which allow for new projects to be worked on, new products, etc., so that we can actually just get back into the game of making things. Also, speeding up uploads, right? Where I am at the moment in this rental, it takes ages to upload a video, which means things have to be a bit more calculated, which means you can't really be as spontaneous. Or you tell yourself you can be spontaneous, and then you just end up with a backlog of things to upload, and then you just siphon those online over time. But even then, the mental subconscious note of knowing that it takes a while to upload things kind of prevents you from being spontaneous, even if you tell yourself you're allowed to. Weird little mental thing. But I found a way to kind of make it easier to upload things by, you know, really crunching down the size of the videos. So if a video is under a gigabyte, I will be able to upload it from here. Hopefully now, making some changes, we'll be able to have some more functional work videos like this, and then some of the regular, more exciting ones in between. And try new formats as well. Maybe there's a narrator on this video. Thing is, in artwork, as well as things like making videos or programming or whatever, a lot of success is A/B testing. And success is often something that can't really be measured. Or if you try and measure it, you end up just coming up with the wrong way to measure it, because it's not possible to have a perspective on the very long term. So for example, if you make an art piece and you put it out and it doesn't get many likes, I think, oh no, my success is failing, but you're not looking at it on the macroscopic scale. Same thing with YouTube. Like, even up till recently, putting out a video that doesn't perform well, you think, oh no, my success is failing and I'm going downhill. But then this is why going to events like the Blender conference is interesting, because people will tell you that their favorite videos are the ones that they started watching you on, are the ones that traditionally did the worst. Like, the worst videos you've ever put out, those are the ones that people will surprise you with. Like, I remember watching this one. There's a lovely person in our community, Wendy, hi Wendy, who said that her first video that she started watching me on was when I did the unicorn dressing gown for the 100,000 subscriber video. And I remember that one not doing well. It was quite a gratuitous one. It was quite a fun one, just one for me really, just as a celebration for, you know, reaching such a big milestone. And if you'd asked me how many people started watching me on that video, I'd say probably none. Probably more people stopped watching me after that video. And yet, one of the most dedicated community members we have started on that video. So here's the thing. You cannot measure your impact or legacy or success in a traditional way simply based on how something performs in the here and now. I'm coming to learn this a bit more now than ever. It's very difficult because YouTube doesn't have access to, you know, all the information. So it's hard for them to make you feel good when you're putting content out and it doesn't perform well, but you know what? Sod it. These are the lessons we need to teach ourselves. And hopefully by watching me, if you're an artist out there who's worried about their performance, this is just something to keep in mind. You can't see your entire impact. Obviously, that's not much of a comfort for people solely trying to make a living out of it, but I think it is very important to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk about rendering and stuff now, eh? So we got like a brain we can play with. I don't think I necessarily need like all of these extra volumes, because these are things I was using to kind of display other parts of the brain. Oh, weird, everything was hidden. I was wondering why stuff wasn't appearing. All right, so for example, like I've got my head volume here. Actually, that would have been a pretty fun one to turn into a 3D object. Maybe I'll do that one as well. And it's obligatory. I have to play with this while I'm here, but just like, you know, pulling the face back and forth is very cool. Looking inside my eye socket, my big Roman nose appearing, teeth, etc. Very weird. All right, now modular workspaces doesn't quite work in Blender 4.0 at this specific point in time, mostly with the interface splitting, but everything else should be okay. So workspaces, let's unpack this, turn the brain around. Oh, sorry, that was local. Let's do global. 180, get rid of the cube. Camera, set that as active and bring the brain down. So here we go. Oh, I love my tools, love modular workspaces. See how little effort that took to get something this beautiful. All right, so now we have room to play. We can do all sorts of shader stuff, or we can just mess around with this rather crummy brain as it is. Actually, let me play in GeoNodes a little bit quickly, because I just want to try a little bit of a smoothing method. Let me just put in something from my unfinished Biogen things. Smooth geometry, smooth mesh, smooth geometry. There we go. So I was just taking a quick look at smoothing the geometry down. So this is something we can do. That would kind of be an interesting like basis for like weird organic sculpting, like creature type stuff. Look at my little brain butt there. No, just kind of wondering what it would look like if we smooth things down. But yeah, I don't know, maybe a tiny bit, but it doesn't really look like a brain at the front. This is why we're going to need like some assisted sculpting work. But the problem is Blender isn't really designed for voxel sculpting in the way that 3D Coat is more designed for. But even still, maybe that's just my artist brain saying this looks wrong. But maybe to an outside observer, this might actually still look pretty cool. Let me just reset the rotations. There we go. Because let's face it, it is still kind of cool. So we need to present this in a way that kind of emphasizes that. Now, orange is a cool color, but I've always felt blue is something more for intellect or data. Pale greens to science are more like kind of medical viz type stuff. These are just like associations I have with color. Oh, hold on. Do we have the AGX color space in this 4.0? Hang on. AGX. Oh, yes, we do. Okay, let's play with this. Look, I always go for something kind of high contrasty. Maybe I'll go for like medium high, something like that. I suppose it's possible for us to play with lighting now as well. What does it mean by sequencer? I'm not sure. I need to look into that a bit. Punchy. Punchy is a preset. Grayscale. Okay, that'd be cool for kind of testing lighting. Put it on low contrast. High contrast feels a little bit too blown out maybe, but I guess this means that like the lighting presets may need to be rebalanced for AGX. Even so, maybe we do want to move the lighting about to make it a bit more rimmy, I suppose. So we got light going on the light catcher behind. But AGX is quite different from Filmic. See, it kind of feels like we're getting more vibrancy there, but the lighting feels different here. I'm gonna have to get used to adapting for different color transforms. Okay, we probably don't need this extra light. Let's get rid of you. What happens if we move you down, kind of lighting up the back a bit? I'm kind of a fan of that, but it kind of messes with the depth look of the brain. But even still, maybe if we were like holding the brain up with something like on a table, then having a really strong diffused white light coming from above has a kind of laboratory vibe, which is something I'm actually trying to go for in the new studio. I asked the builders whether that's possible to have like a grid of diffused white lights, kind of like how they do in the Apple like showcases, and apparently it should be viable. So I guess we'll go for that kind of vibe in this. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's where I want to go with it. So this is improv still. I want to do something laboratory-ish. And I remember joking with Ben in the original MRI video, where we were taking a look at my brain, that it would be cool to take like samples, segments from my scans, and then kind of put them in like boxes in a lab-like 3D artwork. So they're like preserved samples. So we'll do something a bit simplistically like this, just so I don't take too much time. It's actually kind of something I want to do in real life. You know, I've got my physical artwork stuff that I'm doing, but I would like to create little sculptures which I can like, you know, suspend as like decorations. For example, like there are lots of places in the UK you can go fossil hunting. I'd love to do a bit of that someday, and then put things on like suspended decorative platforms that people can buy and stuff like that, or just sculptures that I make, you know. That's already fun stuff, really tactile artwork. Now let's make what are we going to do? Should we get some inspiration maybe? Let's take a look on Pinterest. All right, I have a lot of Pinterest boards on my account. Let's type in laboratory display. Now obviously I don't have copyright on these images, but for the sake of fair use, I think it'll be okay to show some of this. So there's a lot of well, that's kind of cool. Yeah, a lot of lab equipment, kind of like suspended frames, metal pieces. I'll do something a bit more museum-y though. I'm liking the direction of microbe displays, like these little but that won't make sense for the brain, but just for like future projects, I kind of like that. That could be cool for like geometry nodes demonstrations. Hey Ben, if you're watching, and Chris actually, because I know you love this kind of stuff, limited bound microbial evolutionary sims, but with like good artistic flair, rather than just like simulating one function, like different types and having them come together to build like an art piece. Something to keep in mind. I want to see that. Oh look, speaking of neuro art, look what we found. Fine art exploring the brain, neurons, and all things neuroscience through Asian inspired paintings, scrolls, and micro etchings in ink, dyes, etched metals. Very cool. See how quick that was just to come straight back around to what we're doing. Okay, well nothing has really stood out to me, so let's just go by ourselves. Cursor to selected. Let's make a cube. Let's get you in there. Monsieur default cube. Now, in case we want to take images from multiple angles, we want to make sure that it looks, you know, relatively good elsewhere. Let's get a bevel on this. There we go. 6, shade auto smooth. Do I have some of my default materials in here? Oh, where's my PBR material? I accidentally put another part of my brain as the material. Don't need that. Then we go down to our community material pack, which is available on Gumroad. I'm going to take the plastic material and I will darken this or make it more grayscale. Let's do 0.5. No, too bright. Again, I need to kind of get used to like the AGX look. I can play with the normal strength a bit. I need to keep in mind that I have denoising on. All right, light tree was disabled, but I figure we should enable that, right? That's a performance improvement. Is there any way I can play with the roughness of this? Yeah, there we go. I want something kind of metallic, but I don't need that much surface detail. I'm going to rotate the brain slightly, and what I kind of feel like I want is something just to hold on to the brain. Now, we could just do like one stem going into it, but that feels a little bit basic. What about something a bit spindly, a bit thinner? I'm feeling something round, though. Something that kind of comes around the brain a bit, like maybe in the center here. Like if I, there we go, the annotation works, like going behind and then coming up. If I just do a little sketch, if this makes sense, like it's kind of holding it and then maybe behind the round thing is kind of connected to the frame a bit. So we can play with the idea. Several ways to do this. We could cylinder, then, you know, inset, then cut bits off. We could do a curve. I kind of like the idea of doing a cylinder though. Let's go for 64. And we'll just get the rough dimensions right to start with. And this I feel like should be pretty metallic when it comes to doing the material. All right, so when we get the rough dimension there, we can inset it. But I'm going to make a backup of this. Backup cylinder and hide that. That's something I do. I know a lot of people have like lots of different save iterations for their files. I don't really tend to do that. I tend to just like back up my objects quite a lot inside of the file. Oh, and for the bridging of this, I just used loop tools. There are several ways to bridge faces like that, but that's how I did it. Now, for like cutting off the front, actually this doesn't look particularly equal, so we may need to get a little bit creative with it. But anyway, for cutting off the front, I feel like I don't want to go completely halfway, just so we still get some curvature. A bit like that, you know what I mean? Where it kind of comes out around. Maybe I'll need to rotate it a bit. Actually, maybe rotating it would be pretty interesting like that. Yeah, I feel like a kind of downwards curve looked pretty good when it comes to doing the renders. Okay, now let's clean this up a bit. Actually, maybe I can keep this triangular corner and then just bevel it or something. Okay, so we'll still need to do shading and stuff on it. The brain we can also modify just to make it sit a bit better. I'm going to do shade auto smooth. We're going to bevel it a little bit like this. And then if we subdivide after we bevel, it will preserve the shape. So just to make a point about this, if you subdivide before beveling, then it's going to really smooth it out. And that might actually still look pretty cool, right? Depending on whether we want to make this smooth looking. So we'll keep that in mind. But if you want to preserve the original shape, but just kind of add more geometry to remove the polygonal look around the edges, then bevel it first and make sure you've got enough segments. You can see here that it's smooth at one segment and then you can tighten it up by adding more. These are effectively you adding edge loops using a modifier. And now let's just give this a basic material. I'm going to call this one PBR, physically based rendering. I see the principled BSDF shader has kind of changed in 4.0, which is fine. That's metallic all the way up, roughness down a bit. Although such a completely flat surface with this degree of reflection, it may be hard to see that it's actually there. So maybe the more curved option might actually look better because we're kind of getting more angles. It's easy to see that it's there, but we can always like recolor things as well if we need to. You know, like gold. Blue and gold does work pretty well. Sure, let's go for it. Maybe I'll do like another circle on the base here and then kind of connect it up behind like that. Maybe I'll make the circle a bit bigger. And we could do maybe some other kind of decorative elements on the cube going down or something. Yeah, I kind of like it. I like where this is going. This is like the fun part of improv when you try different things, you go in different directions, and then something really starts feeling nice. That's always quite exciting. Can we reuse the cylinder? Let me try this. I'll reset the rotation. Bring it down. It'll be too thin if I just scale it down. But I've put that there, rotate it the opposite direction. Maybe I will now grab the upper faces, extend them out. Okay, that's kind of nice, but let me thicken out these end bits. What if I extrude back there a bit, time that up, then add edge loops here, and let's scale X to bring them closer like that. Can I do the same thing again? There we go, just so we can get like a little bit of a platform at the back like that maybe we can connect the ring to. You know, now I'm sitting with it a bit. This AGX definitely feels more realistic lighting wise, but let me take a little look. If we go back to Filmic, is it suddenly going to look weird to us? A little bit. It seems paler now. You know what I mean? Oh, the gold definitely looks way better in AGX. Look, Filmic, way too yellow. AGX, mwah. Interesting. But now I look at it, this brain is just like such a simple surface material wise, but now I'm kind of getting distracted. Don't want to start working on the brain until I get the other stuff done. You know, that's another thing about improvising artwork as well, is that you can quite easily get distracted when you start getting to that phase where things start looking good. So we've got to focus a little bit. So how are we going to connect these things? It'd be nice to do something a little bit curved. And we don't need to worry too much about the precise connecting point because we're not really going to be staring at it too much, I suppose. But still, should I do it as a separate object or should it come from this? Maybe a ring or two on the actual support frame here. Let's start with that, even if it's not going to be visible. All right, so we can recycle poly data on the mesh. Is this equidistant? I think it is. So where are we going to do this? We don't necessarily need to make things equidistant. You can imagine that if we had a point in the middle, and if we took like one of these rings and then made a ring from it, we can just rotate the direction and duplicate it to put another one there. So we don't necessarily need to do like the rings at the same time. Even so, with that in mind, I've selected an edge loop here, or a face loop. Duplicated, press P and then remove it by selection. So this turns it into its own object. Now if I grab this and then extrude along normals, I get, look at that, I get a little ring segment. Question here is, do I want to keep the subdivision? I suppose I do, since we're going quite smooth on everything. We can also add more, edge loops as we need them. If I have both of these inset loops selected and double tap G, I can move them like in their space there. So let me add another loop and on this side as well. Have them both selected, double tap G and just move them a bit closer. So now we have quite smooth rings like this. And like I said, the origin is still in the center of the cylinder. So if I go to the local transform here, you notice that the blue arrow tilts down given the rotation of the parent ring. If I press R and then Z, it will now slide along the ring that we took it from. So what this means is if I duplicate it, if I do R, Z, and then say like 20, and then for the other one, RZ minus 20, then we're going to get like an equal movement across the ring there. At least it should be. It doesn't necessarily look like it on here, but the theory does apply. And because the brain is so lopsided, it's a bit hard to tell whether it actually did or not. But you can see here in the rotation, we got -3, -19, +3, +19. So the theory is sound. So now I need to find a way to connect these and these. How am I going to do it? It's been so smooth so far. It needs to be a method I can replicate on the other side as well. If I inset by 0.02, all right, keep that in mind. Inset by 0.02. On this one, I won't inset. What if I join these two? Are they going to have different modifiers? No, they're the same. Okay. Control J. And then what happens if I bridge these to start with? Okay, that gives us something. Again, that doesn't look bad because we're preserving the modifiers. They will have the same modifiers. So smooths it out and bevels it all together. God, everything's just working so well right now. You'd think that this was prepared, it wasn't. I just needed a confidence boost to show that I could still work in Blender after so much time of not really doing it. Improvisation is my strength. Look at that. All right, so that's given us something nice to work with. I miss the feeling of a plan coming together. Look at that. So that's our frame that we've made. Really happy with that. Maybe the base needs to be a bit thicker. God, I wish I had something like that in real life. Maybe I can get it made up. Yeah, the base should be a little bit thicker, I feel like. Not that we'll necessarily see it from this angle, but even so, we only really need from that vertex. If I do S and then Shift Z, we'll be doing it along the Z axis only. So this is a way that we can scale in the ring as such. Because again, for like a base, you want things to be kind of thick. So I just noticed that when I scaled it in, I said that we'd be doing it along the Z-axis only. What I meant was excluding the Z-axis only. So you're doing it on every other plane except for Z. That's what the shift does, which is a super, super useful tool. So if you press shift on like X and Y, you exclude it. So you're basically moving across a plane of whatever's left. That's cool. Maybe you should make the base more interesting and do something with the surface of a Le Brain. What if I copy over the plastic material to start with? Let's see what happens. I can give the brain some normal detail. Let me also make this an independent one so I can manipulate things like the roughness independently. We can go full metal if we wanted, but nah, I don't really like the look of that. I'm kind of going a bit gemstone-y. I want this to be a bit rougher. Right, we can make it transparent. Ooh. Hello. Kind of a fan. Ooh, what about like a diamond? My brain is a diamond. Obviously it doesn't look quite right, but wow, that looks pretty cool. Especially in AGX. Checking this out in standard is way too bloomed out. Filmic log, filmic. I just want to see what these look like in other modes. AGX looks good though. So there are different versions we could do, I guess, because I really, really like that semi-alpha one. I'm going to rename the material to brain, but let me just quickly see what this looks like with dispersion glass on it. Again, that's cool, but there's too much noise going on. Index of refraction just kind of becomes more metallic. Increasing the roughness would work, but again, there's just too much dispersion creating too much noise in there. We can do like frosted glass. Just a regular glass BSDF is pretty interesting. Lots and lots of different options to take this. We could put something inside it as well. We could do like a kind of half and half thing. All right, well, let's go back to the brain for now. I think the regular glass looks a bit better than our alpha one. How easy would it be to do a half and half on this? I'm also maybe going to need to reframe the camera a little bit just to centralize this. Now, the more I look at it, I do kind of like this pattern on the inside here, although we can see the geometry. If I try to like subdivide this, that was gonna go crazy, but if I save it, maybe I'll give it a try. Subdividing on top of a GeoNodes tree. Oh, is it gonna crash? Now we wait. Oh, it worked. There we go. That's moved it out a bit. Nice. Although the noise detail kind of detracts from the smoothness a bit. That is cool. See, do you know what I mean? It kind of feels like we've got like an alien sample on the stand now, even though it's still just a scan of my brain. Before we try other things, different colors also look really good. It looks kind of like chewed up gum, I suppose, which is a good metaphor for my brain. No, I like the blue. Even if we try to split the materials and we fail, I'd say that it wouldn't matter because we can just use both material slots as the same material. So what I'm going to do, box alone, kind of okay, maybe not great because the brain is not completely symmetrical. Taking a look, that's mostly good though. So we assign the other slot. There we go. So we've got a half and half brain roughly, although we need to clean that up down there. Still though, we got brain and we'll do brain 2, we'll duplicate it. Although if I just make that frosted glass, interesting, but maybe it's becoming less obvious that it is a brain, although maybe depending on the context, like if I'm posting it on social media, I can tell people it's a brain and then that's gonna look pretty interesting. Oh, yes. Really like that. You see how excited I get when you play with parameters and then you suddenly realize, oh, everything just looks good. Oh, the blue and the red. Kidding? Blue and the purple. It's all good. What do I choose? Oh, it has to be the red. Yes. What if I put my logo down the bottom there, or some ident of it? Oh, people watching this are going to be cringing at me when I get so excited about how results look. Now this is the importance of the color transform, right? So this is what sRGB looks like for that glass, and this is what AGX looks like. How much better is that? Filmic? No good. This is what we've been waiting for with AGX. So good. All right, now let's tidy up that midline there, because when we do high resolution renders, this looks pretty shy. I won't say it. So the way I would typically do this is by drawing a new like knife line, but that's going to be a little bit tricky now. Let's reset the screen a bit. First of all, we're not entirely clean here. I'm going to reset it all back to the first material slot. All right, so we'll just give ourselves a clean vertex canvas to work with. Now this may get a little bit tricky. I'm going to create a new line and I'm going to need to do it through everything, which I believe is C. Yeah, so when I press C, it's hard to see, but there should be extra dots that appear on the line. Very difficult to see, but that should cut it all the way through. So if I try and go straight as I feasibly can, press enter. Okay, so that's given us a new line. That's not as smooth as I wanted it to be. It has cut all the way through though, but it might be better. Now I'm going to get as close as I can to the line. Now if only there's a way to like select everything else in between. See, the problem is it's not perfect. What if I did a Boolean, but that'd take too long to calculate? Maybe? No, we'll give that a try. Now I'm going to try a different method. So backing up the brain. Probably going to make this quite a large file. Now we're going to make a cube. It doesn't have to be as big as that. Let me adjust the scale. The cube is going to be our intersection line, pretty much. Maybe the reason it didn't cut completely straight was because I was looking through the camera view and not through the orthographic. So about like that. That covers the brain. Oh god, why did I leave it on exact mode? Oh, made a mistake. Let's try that again. I will try the box one more time. But this time I have the geometry nodes tree and the subdivision modifier disabled, and I'm setting it to fast instead of exact. All right, that seems to do something. So in this case, we want the intersect to get roughly half the brain. If it's precisely in the middle, it doesn't work for some reason. Let me try exact. Okay, exact does work. Let me apply that. Get rid of the, oh no, I want to keep the cube because if I make another copy of the brain, I'm going to perform a Boolean operation on this one as well with the same cube, but this time I will difference it just to cut out the half that we separated. Now if I get rid of that, then we should have two separate parts of the brain. Yes, there we go. So technically I can re-enable the subdiv and it may make them look slightly more separated. Okay, the subdiv is very unhappy with our new mesh. It's taken ages now. This is the danger of subdiv modifiers. Alright, I force closed it. Let's go back in and see if we can make a difference. So even without putting the modifiers back on, we now have a perfectly split brain there. So that does look good, but I just want to get that smoothing back on. Why is it not happy with it? If all else fails, I have to go back to the old brain. 3D Pen Toolbox, can you help? Non-manifold edges. Can you make manifold? Same with this one. Oh, okay, that really changed how that looked. Do I like that more or less than before? Kind of less. What happened with it? Oh my god, my brain looks like a gem. I'm just seeing what the old one looked like with the frosted glass. And if I try to make the original one manifold, what happens there? Yeah, not much of a change. So something must have happened, maybe with like the normals for the half split. Even so, this by itself is still a cool result, so we'll keep that in mind. But I'm not giving up on this yet. Okay, I know you might hate me. Let's try without the geonodes going. Simple mode, go. That took a while, but it did calculate in the end. Too long for my liking though, and it's not Catmull Clark. Let's try Catmull Clark. There I go, just browsing Twitter while I wait for the subd to do something. It's not going to work. All right, we're going to abandon that method. All right, let this be a learning experience that sometimes things go very well and sometimes things don't always go well. Maybe this is proof that I didn't like pre-plan everything. All right, so there is another method we can try, which is splitting it on a gradient inside of a shader. Let me add a new one. So I'm putting both of the materials I want inside of this new shader, and I can plug either of them into the brain. All right, now what do I want? I want a texture coordinate node, and the object is its rotation normalized. I'll do that now. What should it be? Object mode? I'm not an expert at all this stuff. Is it like a clamp? Minimum, maximum? No, I need to split down the values. So separate XYZ. My friend Charon would be very disappointed in me if I got this wrong. All right, there's a gradient of some kind. Maybe I should be using a minimum or something. I'm just going to improvise because I'm not the maths guy. Let's do a clamp. There we go. Kind of. People will be shouting at me for not using a map range, but go sod yourselves. All right. We have a gradient across the brain. That's what we need. That's like our mask. Improv. Now we need to mix shader, I think. Is this how we do it? Mix shader. Yes! For someone who sucks at the math side of things, that was a pretty quick success. So obviously there's a bit of a blur in between because I need to clamp it in some way. Oh, there we go. I can just do that straight from the ramp. Like that. Perfect. I really should use different nodes for that, but who cares? It's a result. Which means we no longer have like the weird jagged thing going on down the center of the brain. So is there a way we can rotate this? If I put a mapping node, I think, in between these two, can I rotate? Yes, I can. Look. Now we can get different results across the brain. Oh, I am so good at this now. That's going to be great. We can like mix any shader in with that. I can also move the location across as well, which would be great for doing like animations and stuff as well. Okay, what now? We've got a beautiful frame. Maybe I should parent these or something. Object, keep transform. There we go. We got a beautiful frame and a beautiful brain and a stand. We could probably use a little bit of improvement. I was thinking of my ident. It might be a little bit tricky, but I do have a file for it somewhere. What if it's better having the whole standard frame like that or a bit higher? Well, let's put the whole thing in for now. Is it actually touching the ground? Looks like it. All right, let's look for my ident file. All right, I can probably copy these over. So here we go. I got basic shapes. Let's just get it down roughly where we want it to be. And then we'll end up like booleaning it out. So these are currently curves at the moment. I want to convert to mesh. Then I want to solidify them, or I can just do it manually like that. I also want it to be pretty high res, but the thing is, again, subdiv like that, not so good. And with these sharp edges, beveling is going to be a little bit problematic. This is going to be overlap immediately, so we can't really do that. We'd have to subdiv after the fact if we wanted to make it really smooth. I think ident somewhere near the top like that. that. Let me just centralize things a bit. Nothing here is exactly centered, so I've just shifted it all over a little bit. Okay, so obviously I don't really want like the glowing, I just want it to be slightly cut out like an indent in the thing. So let me join these, call it logo, duplicate it, logo backup, or to make it consistent I'll type in backup logo, hide that. Now I could make this destructive and apply the modifiers, but let me try doing the boolean beforehand. It's not a fan of that. Basically, as soon as it cuts it doesn't like it. So what I'm also going to do is then back up the stand. So a version of that. Then I'm going to take this one and we'll apply the bevel to it. Although actually, let me increase it a bit first. We'll do 12. So we get some good res. And then I will do the boolean, then cut the object out. So now the question is, how far do we want it to cut out? Not too far, I would say. Tiny bit like that. Apply, hide the logo. Oh, I didn't do anything. It's still technically there, but there's a face covering it, I suppose. What if I remove that? No. Oh, there we go. I was selecting the wrong things to delete. Now, obviously, a problem with what we just did there is that, oh, that hasn't really worked properly. Oh God, it's still going wrong with the booleaning. All right, skip this idea. We're going to go for another approach. Get rid of the cube. Give me the backup stand. Make a duplicate of that. And I'm just going to call that on stand. Now, what I'm doing is I'm just placing it on top, but giving it a slightly different version of the ident at the moment. And I think I'll make it a bit small as well, just to make it less obvious. And now I wonder what it looks like if we change colors of the lighting. I don't really want to do this because it's going to mess with the colors of the materials, but just for the sake of seeing what AGX does, that's interesting. Although one thing that's interesting to me is that Smouse on Twitter recently showed off the potential for changing the light fall off in the light nodes. Might be something to play with at some point. But for now, I think this might do, although let me play a bit more with this standard material. Thing is, do I want to go dark or do I want to go light? Oh, we can even go subsurface. Subsurface is interesting. It gives it this waxy look that we can combine with our colors. So maybe I do like that. Raises the question, does the ident even fit on something like that now? Because that looks pretty perfect as it is. There needs to be something more. Tell you what I'm going to do. Let's tuck you into it like that. Cursor to selected. We need to be a bit more ornate with the stand if we're going to do gold. Maybe something branching like a tree. I could use my Bigen like subdivided. Oh yeah, I'm getting new. Yeah, like a tree thing. Kind of growing around the stand. Oh, taking this in a whole new direction. Tell you what, I'll pee first before doing this. All right, let's keep going. I have an idea for what I want to do now. I want to do some kind of like branching golden structure, kind of like in the way that we've done the stand, but coming around the stand maybe like a tree, kind of representing the neural branches, the branches of neurons and synapses connecting, a bit like roots for a regular tree, or the fractal universe as a whole. Seems quite appropriate. Now, with my Bigen add-on, which I don't even know if it works in Blender 4.0, it's not even active on this. I do have a way to help myself make that. Tell you what, let me just get it linked up quickly. Okay, there we go. Bigen should be active now. Let me just make sure the preferences are saved. And we are back. So in Bigen, under parametric, was it? Under the official pack, we had hard surface frame. If I import the template, that gives me the object with the specific modifier stack in the specific combination that I like. Now, if I give this the same material as the gold, then what this gives us is a starting point for doing the branching structure using just a series of planes, which we can easily modify. So now I've got to think about this. I want to start it behind. I also need to scale this down. I don't need to worry about applying the scale. Let's get you back here. Will the material preview mode be good for us? Quite possibly. Oh, dark though. Maybe not. What about Eevee? All right, so the cool thing about this is we can do branches. So we can have like polygons going off in one way, and then we can do more polygons going off in a different way like that, which is great. So I guess I just need to get started. And what I will do is maybe down here, if I put up the 3D view, this can give us like a rough idea for what things look like. Nice. I like these big swooping metallic looks. What I should do is kind of split this up a bit somewhere along the middle. Tilt it down as if it's kind of like breaking away, I suppose. Let's widen these. Can you imagine how difficult these curves would be to make without a subdivision surface modifier like this? I like kind of twisting it all as we go down because it gives us more opportunity to see like reflections as it goes, which should look much better in the cycles once it's all ready. Now, what I am thinking is it would be nice if a kind of ornate pattern was symmetrical. I still want to do stuff around the stand maybe. However, there's a whole thing, you know, about the left and right side of the brain having slightly different functions. So it'd be nice if they were mostly symmetrical, but with some minor differences. that kind of distinguished each side. But I guess for now, I'll just continue with shaping a bit. I feel like the curves look much better as they really tighten up at the end. So let's make sure we're making that happen. Okay, so now making sure that the origin is kind of central. Let's set it to the 3D cursor. Actually, let's put the 3D cursor on the stand, then set the ornate origin there. Then let's add a mirror modifier and make sure, let's reset the rotation of it. There we go. So that's kind of giving us the mirrored shape. Let's just quickly see what this is like in cycles. I quite like it. Maybe going a bit over the top, but I don't know. If we rotate, we can get different looks as well. So again, inspiring yourself into new directions. You start with one thing and then take a look how it looks. Almost like a crown like this, you know, waves coming down. Kind of prefer that angle. This is what happens, you know. Good improv. You make something, do an adjustment and think, actually, that kind of looks better. Some people may disagree, but I kind of like it. Looks more even from the sides as well. The color doesn't even necessarily need to be the same, but we'll keep it the same for now. Maybe in this case, it may be good to leave the stand clear as like a moment of rest, I suppose. Maybe just a little bit of something, like a band across the top and the bottom. Yeah. All right, so that's 2 edge loops. Then Z, Control, let's get them the same distance apart from each other, like that, I guess. Control B to widen both of them. Now we're going to add a new material group, give that PBR, which means that should be a little ring like that. Now PBR ornate, just changing the material quickly, because let's see what this looks like as a silver instead. Do you feel like that's more balanced than having everything gold? Do you think having that gold also diminishes like the value of the gold elsewhere, or do you think it's completely complementary? Colors will be too much in this case. Silver or gold, I think. Maybe gold. All right, next question. The catcher. We haven't really played with the light catcher much in this. Not that we needed to. I think it may be better just to leave it as it was, rather than draw attention to it with like, you know, materials or surface imperfections. Both of the lights we have active are important because the first one is like our main light, the back one, and the other one is kind of like our fill light, I suppose, or a key light. I always had a trick about using a point light under a area light to get a different distribution of shadow sharpness. However, I don't think in this case it'll make much of a difference. It will get a bit more of a kind of flary blur at the top there. With it, we also get 2 different types of shadows at the base, which I quite like. So maybe that does actually work. Or even behind like that, which is quite cool because it gives us another source of reflection from the ornate elements. Right, now for real-time compositing. Let's take a look. I want to use the Better Bloom node, so I might need to go and grab that. Node tree, Better Bloom, plug this in between. So Better Bloom can be gotten from Lenoco, who I'm pretty sure I've shared on a community roundup once. I prefer the quality of it as a node group. It also allows you to plug in a like lens dirt mask if you want as well. And it worked with the real-time compositor before even the glare node worked. So now let's do compositor always. Here we go. So even while we're in cycles, we can start to see some bloom going on and adjust it however we want to. So we can make it really strong or not so much. So I don't want anything too strong, but I do want it visible. Oh, cool. We can get really moody with that by adjusting the mix, but kind of like going backwards. Now I'm just playing with the materials a little bit. Do I want the blue to be a bit darker maybe? I feel like that detracts from it. But we can always change the combinations of colors and materials and such after the fact. But to be honest, I quite like what we've created here today. And this would also be a pretty good thumbnail as well. It's quite high in the contrast and quite bright, which is usually quite good for thumbnails. There we go. Now let's try rendering this out. We can do with and without versions of the frame as well, which is nice. All right, give us a render. I may need to check like the render and viewport values and make some changes to the frame at some point. But here we go. This is like the general output. So I might play around with this a little bit more, just make some final changes and then save it out. But to be honest, starting from just like that really dirty sculpt of the brain right at the beginning, messing around, making decisions as we went, wondering what to do with it, I'm really happy with the result that I've come up with. So if you made it this far, put a brain emoji in the comments. It's probably going to be quite a long video because it's more of like a watch me work, watch me try and get back into making something with Blender again. I'm quite happy to see that even after all this time of not making artwork, I still have something there. You know, please consider subscribing to my Patreon or purchasing any of my Blender tools. You'll notice I used a few in this video. Got modular workspaces, Biogen, etc. Although not everything works on Blender 4.0, so that's something I really need to look into. I use some materials from our community material pack. That's also available. It's free to download, but again, if you find any of it useful, then consider leaving a donation because it really helps. And I will also make this file available on our exclusive server, which is for people that have been signed up as a $5 patron of mine for over a year, or anyone that's purchased one of my physical artworks or has received a card from me in real life. Also, follow me on social media, and especially my Instagram if you want to kind of connect on a more personal level and learn a bit more about what I do with my time. So yeah, thanks for watching everyone. I quite enjoyed this one. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.